Hi, everybody. Welcome to my brand new podcast that I named the Aqua Naturalists. I know we're all fish lovers here, but have you ever wondered where the fish in our aquariums come from? Or what's it like in their natural habitat? If these questions ever cross your mind, then this is a podcast for you. In this pilot episode, you meet my co host Casey and find out the reason why we started this podcast and our plans for future episodes. We also talk about our origin story in the hobby and a whole lot of other fun stuff. Before we start, I just want to thank one of the friends of the show who made this podcast possible. I think most people are familiar with the Flipper magnet cleaner, which is the best scraper in my experience. Their max size scraper can even be used on the 1200 gallons that I named the Groot. And the glass on that tank is 1.2 inches thick. For our metric listeners, that's 30 millimeters. And you might be surprised to find that they have a whole range of products, like the deep sea viewer and for your coral lovers, the top down viewer. For a limited time, Flipper Aquarium product is offering our listeners an exclusive coupon code for their website. Just enter TMK_Aquarius at the checkout to get a free gift with purchase plus free shipping on your order. That's TMK_AQUARIST. Alright, now on to the show. Welcome to the very first episode of the Aqua Naturalists Podcast, guys. My name is Mark Chen, aka TMK Aquarist, and here with me is my co-host Casey Boyle. Casey. Oh, what's your last name?
No,
Casey
you're
Boyle.
right.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. So he's
First try.
known as the H2O Bro Aquatics on social media.
Yeah.
Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, Casey?
So I'm Casey. I'm from Florida, and like many people, I have an addiction to the hobby. But before that, I've just fell in love with nature. I'm in one of the best places for it, and I love all things water and wildlife. And I think you're one of Mark. You're one of the first people that sucked me into the hobby when I first got in. I saw
You're
the
welcome.
river.
Or I'm sorry.
Thank
Either
you.
way, it
And
could
that
go
you, I
either
think
way.
that my wife probably hates you. So that's my introduction.
Yeah. Most wives hates me.
Yeah.
That sounds wrong, but for a very different reason than.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, but I'm glad that you said it's addiction because it is addiction. And the hobby it really is all consuming for a lot of the hobbyists. Once you get in, I mean the hobby is so deep that like I've been in the hobby for what let's see, I really started when I was like around like 19 or so. So I'm giving my age away now, like 20 years, about 20 years. I am that old. But yeah, it's
the wrinkles.
like I'm still learning new stuff every day. The hobby is just that deep. And it's fascinating because for you and I, we are mostly into freshwater side of things. And there's a whole different side of things with reef that we don't haven't like really explored it yet. And the reason why I think I am not so much into reef is because I've always thought, okay, I'm gonna reserve that section when I'm like, kind of getting bored with the freshwater side. And then I don't have to, like get burnt out or quit the hobby. And then like I have like a whole new side to me that I can explore and like, like get my interest. But then the thing is, like, freshwater is so huge that I'm
Can't get that.
still enamored with it. And then, like just it's incredible. I think Heiko touched on this in one of his conversations or like interviews that it's incredible that the freshwater environment can have so much diversity, right? For in terms of fish, in terms of like the number of species that you think about it, like I mean, it only accounts for 3% of the entire world's water resource, yet it's yielding like probably on par of like in terms of like the number of species of fish
Yeah.
to its counterpart, the saltwater fish population, which is insane, right?
It
So the hobby is so deep that like you if you want a lifetime hobby, this probably is the hobby to to be in for sure, right?
no, it's wild because I grew up on the ocean. I love the reefs. I love all that. But there's something like you're saying, there's something I haven't been drawn to the reefs as much as I have to fresh water. And I know for a lot of people it doesn't make sense because for the most part, salt water is so much more colorful, but there's something that fresh water grabs. And my wife initially couldn't get onto it. She really wanted salt water,
Mm,
but as after I've tailored things from watching some of your stuff and made an aquascape better, she truly loves like fresh water now. So,
right.
and she loves the silver dollars, which you don't. So,
Well, I mean, like she wanted color, and now she's into silver dollar. What, what a change,
I
what
know.
the irony, right? And when you
Yeah.
say, like I'm glad that you said that the saltwater have a lot of color. And it's like such a misconception on the freshwater part, right? Like especially on the fish, because a lot of my clients come to me and they right out the bat, they will tell me I want saltwater aquarium. And then I'll go in and ask why. And they're like, yeah, the fish are way more colorful. And then I'll show them a picture of my discus. And then I'll be like that, right? And then they're like, yeah, exactly like those fish.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell them, hey, that's a freshwater fish. And like you can see them getting shocked, like what? How? So I go in and explain, like freshwater fish, like they change color so dramatically, and then when they're scared and stressed, when you see them in the fish store, which is probably the most common place people see them, right? Like they're just not going to show their true color, and then their intense color and pattern is all gone. It's like dark or it's like very pale depending on which fish it is. And then people just get this misconception that like freshwater fish are just boring, colorless, but it's totally the opposite.
You mentioned that they I think a lot of times too, a lot of the people that we speak with in North America, they see things out of their own rivers in their trouts, and a lot, not a lot other than like a rainbow trout, a lot of fish are kind of to hide a little bit. They're green, they're browns, and so that's what they think, I feel like, of fresh water a lot of times.
Yeah. Exactly. And to me, the whole reason why I started my business, Nature Design Studio, is that I want to showcase these freshwater environments, right? Because until Jacques Cousteau came along to, show us the under ocean view of the corals and everything, like not a lot of people knew about the colorful, like the vibrant, lives that's in our ocean either. And then that's the same case for freshwater environments because like freshwater is only this very limited resources and in the world, and you have most freshwater to be turbide or whitewater or like black water, which the black water here, it's like the visibility of the water is very very low and you hardly can see what's in there. And then even if you walk by or like if you're near a clear water, right, or a stream, how many of us actually, walk by a lake and then stick their heads in the water and see what's going on down there, right? Not many. So that beauty is just missed and or rather dismissed from people, right? And then yeah, so that's exactly why I even found my company to try to showcase this so other people care about these environments. And that is really a great, I guess, segue to why are we starting another podcast? What's the reason that like another podcast exists in the world? Because there's just way too many podcasts out there, you and I know. And then yeah, let's talk about a little bit of that. What is the purpose of our podcast and why is it called Aqua Naturalist?
Well, for me at least, when you came to me about a podcast, I had never done one. Like you're saying, there's a ton of them out there. But I think also like you, I have like a love for fresh water, and a love for conservation of it too. Like every year I'm trying to find another organization to donate to. And I think a lot of people do have podcasts on like what we see in the hobby, but it seems like a lot of them are geared towards, certain information or general knowledge of fish tanks and plant and tanks and how to fix things and how to diagnose diseases. But I was mostly excited to talk about how you can kind of, emulate some of the natural things into your own home as an art. but also how you can appreciate how it gives you an avenue into appreciating the real wildlife out there.
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't say said that better myself. So I really want to incorporate this wilderness and natural environment side of the hobby. It's not so much of the hobby, but I guess it's related to the hobby, right? Because when you see fish in our fish tank, you don't really see the other side of the story, which is like where are the fish come from, right? And what type of environment they were living in, and then all that really is an important part of, I guess, fish keeping, because you want to know exactly how and why the fish, adapted and evolved to that either body shape, or that, like, why do they have such colorful pattern or color on their body. And then there are a lot of like specialty characteristic that fish or aquatic lives will have due to the environment, right? Due to their environment. And then it's so fascinating. And then I think the aquatic environment is just one piece of the entire natural world, right? And then you have really deep water, like lakes, deep lakes, all the way to like very shallow streams. And then above the stream, right, you have like vegetation growing from the stream all the way up and then to the bank. And then, you have like entire rainforest surrounding a river or stuff like that. So I think all of that is really cool. But then, like what my bio used to say on Instagram, right? And my bio used to say that the aquatic environment is the key to my fascination with the natural world, right? So I think we're not gonna only gonna touch on, like the hobby itself, but we want to really deep dive and get to know the environment and the wild that's related to our aquatic environment that we love so much, right? So
Yeah.
on this podcast, we're gonna invite different people from different expertise, right, in terms of what they have explored or have like very, very deep knowledge on, and then from different facets of this natural world. And then we'll interview them, and then we'll really talk about very interesting topics related to their field of expertise, and also like maybe a specific topic on this specific environment or specific area
Yeah.
of the hobby.
Yeah, and hopefully in that time too, I can go in and put myself in some of the environments here in Florida that can be so diverse. I just get yelled at a lot now that I have a baby. That my wife's always afraid of the alligators,
Right.
but there's some cool places here that maybe I can share some of that footage, the wild footage, and the good and the bad. Some of the areas are overrun with invasive species.
Oh, that's a
And
huge
then
topic.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
talk about
the
that for a little
the
bit. I mean, I would love to, go over to Florida and have you, be my guide to see all these springs. I mean, the natural springs in Florida is just amazing. But then I, like your wife, am also concerned about the alligators. Like to get
well, I'll
into the
say.
water with them. I mean, okay, what is the likelihood that one would just creep up on you and then kind of like see you as a target?
Yeah, I'd say pretty low. I'd say that they actually they usually don't attack humans. And actually I was gonna make a long time ago, I was gonna make a TikTok as a joke that me looking up the statistics of what's the chance of me getting bit by an alligator, and then and showing me jump into like an alligator infested water, just basically it says like,
Yeah.
oh, 1 in 1 million. I'm like, oh well, I'm good, and jump in the infested waters. But I would say like I've been out on the river and seen an alligator before a couple times, but
Mhm.
they're afraid. They're not like a crocodile. So I
Mm,
think the only time it really happens is in communities where there's a lot of people and people have fed the alligator,
mm.
or a lot of times someone's walking their dog. I
Ah,
think that alligators normally look at like a four-legged smaller creature as food. And so,
sure,
even
sure.
here down the street, there's a park, there's an alligator there. I've never had it my wife doesn't let me go near with the baby, which makes sense. I'm not trying to, but
Right.
as you're walking around the park, you'll see it. It has never come towards us, but there are little rabbits running around, and I know that's what it would go for. But again,
Mm.
if you don't feed them, they usually do. They hide. They go underwater when you show up. I've
So
never
even
had
if
an
you
alligator
jump in the water
come
and
towards me.
then they'll like kind of just stay away from you.
Yeah, like I have never had I've been in the water multiple times with alligators and I couldn't get to one if I wanted to. I've caught them on fishing line and had to remove the hook, but like
Wow.
they're not aggressive like crocodiles. So when
Wait,
you
wait,
see
hold on,
someone
hold
like
on.
Steve,
So wait, so you
yeah.
caught them on the fishing line and then like you had to go near them and remove the fishing line from them?
Well, so I kind of lied there. I have caught them on a fishing line when I was probably 10 and I didn't
Oh,
mean
okay.
to, didn't even know it was there.
Sure.
And I took off. I was in grass, but I pulled it with me, kind of running. It was a small one, probably 3 feet, 4 feet, but I didn't know what to do. So I pulled him all the way back to my grandfather's house. And in
Oh
the grass, he
no.
was fine. And my
Uh,
grandfather had to get on him, cover his eyes,
okay.
plier out the piece. But yeah, no, I haven't not as an adult. I have almost, and I try to avoid you reel in real
Sure,
quick, but
sure.
they're
That's
opportunistic for
fascinating.
sure. If you catch a fish, they're coming too for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can imagine that. So that's good to know because I definitely want to get in the water, like hopefully soon. And then that's like kind of the number one thing that I mean, like I've been to the Amazon. Then like before I went there, I was very concerned as well, right? I was like, okay, so there's caiman, there's anaconda, yeah, anaconda, and then there's like all kinds of
Piranhas.
like wild stuff, right? And then I'm
Yeah.
like, so I was a little worried to be honest. But then when I went there, I mean, it was really sad to see that like we really didn't encounter much wildlife at all. The closest encounter with the caiman, I want to say caiman because it was so far away and it was at night. And then when we like kind of like shine the flashlight onto the river, we see like these glowing red dots right in the
Yeah.
distance, and that's pretty much like the eyes of the caimans, right? But then it was so far away from us, and then we didn't get to see one up close. I did eat one. That was like the
Well,
tail
caiman.
portion of caiman, and then it's like one of the indigenous tribes. They had that, and then they were like smoking it, and it tasted pretty okay, pretty well, pretty good.
Some of them can be
Yeah.
yummy. Some people say it tastes like chicken. I hear too. What was it
I
like for you?
I don't know what it tastes like, but then I just knew that it tasted better than some of the fish that
You
we were
expected?
tasting, because
Oh, really?
yeah, 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 because it has a more, I guess, consistency that's a little bit similar to beef,
Yeah, that
like
would make
very
sense.
chewy type of texture. But I mean, like that was a tail portion. Anyways, I digress. But yeah, so
You were there at like for a different reason than I was. It's funny, I wasn't in the hobby yet, and I went there, and it's funny, I wasn't coming from Florida. Like I'm used to snakes and alligators being around you and that kind of stuff, and I knew the Amazon is more wild. It was way different than I expected when I got there. I had no idea what to expect because I was going there as like a vacation
which
and
part?
going down. Huh?
Which part did you
What'd you
go?
say? Oh, the like Iquitos area. Got
Oh,
on
okay, so in Peru. Gotcha.
yeah, I got into a boat there and went down and saw the pink dolphin and everything. But I was
Nice.
most afraid because there's not, I swear, every year that goes on, you get more information. So at the time, I never thought about the Amazon, other than like it being wild and playing that game, Amazon Trail or whatever. What was that? Where you go down a riverboat on you never heard of that Amazon
No.
game that it was? Well, there used to be a game where you want to make sure you didn't get malaria and you're going down the Amazon River, kind of like the Oregon Trail. But when I was on the river, at first I was so afraid of that fish that they say swims up
Oh,
uh
yeah, yeah, yeah.
your and so that's the only thing. I kept asking the guide because he was like, "You guys can jump in." There was a bunch of the native kids. They were all jumping in. They had dug out wooden canoes, and they were
Sure.
telling us all come in. And I was like, "Yeah." And so I wanted to jump in, but I'm like, "You promise me, that fish isn't there." And they're like, "We everyone always asks us that." No, like they're like, "That's not a thing here." Like,
Yeah.
no, you're fine. Everyone swims. These kids swim all the time. And I was like, all right. So then I jumped in. But there could be an anaconda underneath me. Not worried about it. I was just worried about that fish.
Right. Yeah,
But
yeah,
the
I know exactly which type of fish you're talking about. And for our listeners or viewers, that it's a really nasty type of fish that for guys especially is a huge problem because it swims up your genital and then gets like completely
it
stuck in
has
there
like
and
barbs
then
where you can't pull it back. Yeah.
right and then the theory I think like on why they do that is that they're attracted to ammonia or something, right? Or
But
like
they made it seem like it's almost blown out of proportion, that it's like a thing that has happened once before, which obviously one time is enough, but
right.
that it happened
One
that
time
time.
is too
It
many.
reminds me, yeah, it reminds me of how they make it seem like they call it an Amazonian woman, like these tall, like 6 foot women, but everybody there, it makes sense. Everybody there is pretty average or short in their height, and there's no idea of this Amazonian woman. I was surprised when not that I thought that was the truth, but I was like, no, this makes sense. There's no tall people, extremely tall people here, but the wildlife there was crazy. Lily pads that are 6 foot long,
Mm.
that's what they
You
should
got to
call
see
it.
all that?
Yeah,
Oh wow,
I got to,
nice.
it was
Yeah,
such a wild trip. It was such a good trip.
man, that's great. I want
Yeah,
to
but
go to Peru
your
as
trip
well.
was more than nitty gritty. You were like in the water. You were looking for fish species. You were doing more of the hobby side of it. I just happened upon the adventure because
That's
my family
cool.
asked if I wanted to go on vacation.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, you should like we should definitely do a trip too, together. But
Yeah.
in terms of like just the Florida wildlife and the environments, like that those springs are, I mean, even in the Amazons you hardly will find a clear water, stream or a spring like that because it's mostly just white water or black water. So in the black water region, you can have, a little bit more of that visibility, right? So you can snorkel a little bit more. But then, yeah, in the white water, it's just so turbid and the current is so strong that, like not only you don't want to get into the water, but then even if you get in there, there's not much to see because I mean, like, you
Yeah.
can see out to
There's
here.
loads to go.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, but in Florida, I mean, it's so beautiful. I see the footage, this kid, his name's Luca. I think I shared his
Oh yeah.
stuff on Instagram, right? Like, so he's recorded some beautiful footage, and he's actually one of the first guests that I want to invite onto the podcast, right? To interview. And then it's just an incredible, I guess, special location for these clear water. But it's a little sad to see, all these invasive species, right? That I mean,
I
like the
say
water is so perfect for tropical fish that, every species you throw in there will thrive and breed, right? And then especially the plecos, right?
Well, you also find what's funny about Florida is I grew up here, and you slowly realize that a lot of the species you see around you are invasive, and you didn't even know it. I just always
Right.
thought like the lizards outside my house. There's
Yeah.
probably 1,000 lizards around my house. They're all Cuban lizards, but I found that out like 2 years ago. I always thought they were like a Florida lizard, and I found out no, that they're from Cuba and they're actually invasive. So,
Right. And the iguanas too, right?
yeah, and so
Yeah.
down south,
Don't
they
you
don't
guys
really have
have
that
like
many around
a
me.
yeah, don't you guys have like a if you see one, try to kill it type of policy,
Oh
right?
yeah, I don't know if they have that for iguanas yet, but they banned iguanas in, I think you say tegu. Is that how you say the type of lizard? They're
Not
like a
sure.
giant. I think it's TEGU. I think they're called tegus. They are banned in Florida now. The Cayman
Okay.
lizard isn't banned yet, so I'm still trying to work the wife over for that one. But the iguanas, they'll in even Miami. So when it doesn't get cold often, and they're not from a cold area,
Mm.
but when it does get cold, that they make the joke, and it's true that the iguanas will fall out of the trees around you, and
Mm.
they don't have, since they need to warm up for their
Right.
blood. They can't regulate, so you can kind of just pick them up, but normally if you try to grab one of those, they're going to whip you. So they're everywhere though. they
Right.
are
But when it gets
they really
cold
are
and then they fall off the tree, are they just kind of like they're not dead?
they're
That's what I'm saying.
incapacitated. Yeah, they're
Okay.
not they a lot of times they're not. Some die, I'm sure some die, but a lot of times they really just are so cold and for a while that they
Mm.
fall out, and then they can warm up, they just can't
Got it.
utilize their body. But that's you'll see that with snakes sometimes here too. But for the most part, the invasive species, like we have I tried saving a catfish when I like 5 years ago. I thought it was like a Florida catfish. I thought it was stuck. It's just a walking catfish, like an Asian walking catfish. I just saw it crossing the street in front of me in water, just walking across. I was like,
Right.
oh, I put it back into the water, and I found out that's one of those where you're supposed to kill them, like a snakehead. If you see
Mm,
them here, you're supposed to kill them.
right.
Especially fish. I don't see them. They have like hunts for pythons in the Everglades, but for the most part, invasive species, they're probably all around me so much that I don't even notice. But for the most part, I don't see too many. I'll see the plecos. I'll see the Cuban lizards outside my house. This is in Tampa. And then I'll see like African cane toads once in a while. And they're very hard. They're hard to tell a little bit from our native
Mm.
toad. They're very similar. So you almost have to look up a picture of them to tell the difference. And then maybe some people kill them. But I feel weird about invasive species. I agree that they need to be taken out,
Hmm.
but I almost feel like it's like it's humans' fault and the animal has no idea.
Exactly. That's
It's
exactly
hard
the
to
sentiment that I have towards invasive species. On like, like I see comments on social media and then people hate on like, these invasive species and they're like, oh man, like these, like damn these plecos. But that I mean, like it's not the plecos' fault. Like they probably didn't want to be taken out of the Amazon and like transferred to like a foreign place, but it's not their fault. And I saw this article on the infestation of plecos especially, right? So usually they are spread out in the waterways, right? And then so that like they first of all like they breed like crazy, and then there's
yeah
no like natural predators that they'll hunt them down. So their number just like proliferates, right? And then the the other thing that's even worse is that when the temperature drops, right? And then they all swim back into these springs which have like higher temperatures, warmer waters, right? And then so the influx of these guys all coming into the springs just like creates a huge nitrate spike, right? And
yeah
then the nitrate spike basically allows for, like it gets algae bloom, and then the algae will eventually suffocate the native, aquatic plants, like, the beautiful Lowigias and everything. And then that is just incredibly sad. And then also they, graze on manatees, which is probably one of
yeah.
the like one of my favorite animal in
Also,
the
those
world.
ones
So yeah, so I saw this video of like, just a huge horde of them. Like they're all black. It's not even like I
yeah
mean it's
no,
it's one thing if like they're all these rare species
fancy
of plecos,
yeah.
right? That would be amazing. But no, it's like all these common plecos that like the dark ones that get like 2 feet long, that does like nobody any good. So yeah.
There's a when I watch videos like that too. So I haven't seen a lot of plecos in the springs. I know that there's areas where they're at, but I haven't come upon any of them. I have seen them in the river near me right here, just a random like brown river, and there are tons of them in there.
Mm,
But there was a quote I used to see people all the time commenting on videos growing up too, and they'd say something like, don't get involved, like let nature take its course, like something like if there's baby sea turtles and they're trying to make their way to the water, it's like it's wrong to interrupt it. And I've always felt I have a weird spot on it. Like I get in some areas where you let it happen, but I've always felt that humans have already gotten
yeah,
themselves so
exactly.
involved that it is almost our duty to try to it without impacting it worse, trying to help those species, like helping those turtles get into the water. A seagull does not need that one little baby turtle to feed on. Like we need more to get out into the ocean and try to survive. So like that's how I've always felt. Like a endangered tiger, you're going to make sure it gets water. I think you should if you're a wildlife photographer, like that kind of idea.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right
Sorry, I meant
because
if it's dehydrated, you need to help out where you can now that we've impacted so much.
you're so right because I mean, like without us, without our hands in either destruction of natural habitat or just like bringing invasive species to where they don't belong, that's already it's already happened. So you gotta do you gotta do it. Like you gotta interfere.
Yeah,
That's what I think too.
companies here, especially in Florida. I can't speak on California because California has an amazing wildlife too, but
Mhm.
I've actually never been to California yet, and it's on my list. But here, companies have already involved themselves. Nestle tries to pumps out lots of water out of our springs, and most people that aren't Florida natives don't notice it, don't know about it, but we all have to do petitions to stop them from trying to take more water than
Really?
necessary.
Well, like
Yeah,
the
and
bottled water, like so like Dasani and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, they are already taking. They always try to get more and more. They're always trying to take more
Bastards.
because it's coming out from the aquifers. And they're trying to say like, we're doing what good. We're bringing bottled water, but it's like no, we don't
No,
need you more in
no.
here. And then there's runoff. It's not to attack farmers. I'm sure small farmers not a big deal, but like companies dump
Industries,
their
yeah.
yeah into the waterways, and it's as the nitrate spikes, kills manatees, kills dolphins, kills the lower
Yeah.
the
But here,
lower
like
species.
our industry, I mean, any industry, like, just as long as it's industry, it's just so bad because, like, but, well, I mean, that's a different topic and it gets
Yeah, we get ourselves so
political
sucked in.
and philosophical. So maybe, we won't bore our listeners with it. Okay, I want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Nature Design Studio, for making this show possible. From high end to super high end aquariums, Nature Design Studio will design, build, maintain your dream aquariums and other nature oases like paludariums, living walls, koi ponds, and even reptile habitats. Visit naturedesign.studio to find out how your dream project can become a reality. Nature Design Studio, natural wonders realized. Okay, back to the show. Interesting and very, very cool to have you, in Florida and explore these areas. And then there's one place I always want to go. I think it's called the Three Sisters Springs,
Yeah, Three Sister
right?
Springs, one of my
Yeah, that
favorite
has
places.
like
Yeah,
amenities,
yeah.
spots and everything. And like I see people paddleboarding across and just like kind of observe like that place. I really want to go. And then I know Chris Lookup, have
Yeah.
taken, George Farmer to, like these different springs and all that. Like, I really want to go.
There's a cool one you'll get to go to. It won't be it'll be natural and untouched, but it might not have all the species of plants that you might like to see. But a lot of my footage I had before is of a place called Rainbow River, and
Hmm.
they only allow a certain amount of people on the river a day, and it moves. It's a constant move, so you can't fight the river, so you can't go upstream. So you get in, you go downstream for like 2 hours, and you
Hmm.
can just hold onto your raft and put your face underwater and snorkel. And I've seen river otters, alligators,
What, otters?
snakes, but like, yeah, there's otters. You know, what's
Oh
funny
my
is that people
God.
don't even, my wife's like, there's otters here. I'm like, yeah, like I've seen them my whole life, but I don't think to tell anybody. It's like when I found out about freshwater stingrays, I had no idea until
Yeah.
Monster, what's it called on the Animal Planet back in the day. I was like, there's freshwater stingrays. So
River
same thing,
monsters.
otters here in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeremy Wade.
But yeah,
Yeah. Oh man, that's incredible.
I
I
can't catch them on foot. Like I can't get them in on footage yet, just because they're so aware and they're
sure,
so
sure.
quick. And so I can
And they're
see
so
them, but when I
smart
want to go
too.
underwater, the visibility it's too far, and they're just like
Right.
there's snakes underwater, and they're so crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Dang, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I definitely
No,
have
they're
to
really
go.
cool.
So, yeah, tell us about your new tank.
Awesome. My new tank is a 10-foot long, 2.5 foot tall, 2.5 foot wide, and it's acrylic. It's my first scape, and I used a lot of inspiration from you. And I would say, I know it's going to sound like a plug here, but when I became a subscriber to you and was able to like ask you, and then the group of subscribers, like all of them are so talented. They all give me plant, like fish, like scape help. So I think that everyone's like, I can't believe that's your first scape. But it's like I took a lot of inspiration from different tanks I saw online, but then like watched you and your escapes online, and then bugged the hell out of everybody. in the group. And everyone gave me such good tips that I feel like I did pretty well on it. And as soon as I finished that tank, I started kind of talking to my wife about the outdoor pond
Yeah,
idea. And
yeah,
she throws her hands up. She's like, no, we just got this tank. We're going to appreciate the tank right now. But so
yeah.
that's off in the distance. But right now the tank is still it's a South American tank that I'm still adding more fish to right now. But right now it has redhead tapajos and
Bleeding heart.
yeah, flame. They're called flame back bleeding heart tetras, and they're actually
They're
really
great.
intensely red. Yeah, I couldn't imagine how intense. Like it's hard to capture it on camera, or at
Right.
least an iPhone, but in person, they're as intensely red as I could imagine.
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, like I've never seen bleeding heart that red, right?
Yeah,
Especially around the edges. That's awesome. And the reason why your tank doesn't look like a first time scape is because the amount of questions you ask, like
yeah,
you ask
time.
everybody, like, which is great. I mean, like everybody should do that. And then just the incredible amount of patience you showed, right? Like throughout the whole process. Because it was a long process, right? Like about what, a
Yeah.
year and a half at least, I want to say.
Yeah, part of it was the manufacturers, but then I think half a year was me having the tank in place and like bugging you and like because I never drilled a tank before either, so I'm having to drill because they didn't do it
Yeah,
for me, plumb the whole thing too, and like it felt overwhelming because I've done all
sure,
the
sure,
stuff before,
sure.
but I know I can't mess it up, and it's like
Right.
you know
It was
once
such
I drill this
a
hole,
learning curve, huh?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that
especially
reminds me
that
a
turns out
lot.
plants too.
Right, your journey with the tributary, which is the name of your tank, it
Yeah.
reminds me a lot of my build with the river, right? So the river, for those of you guys who don't know, is a 450 gallons freshwater planted tank, which I got most of my Instagram followers on, like from, right, that build. And then when I started that build, I was pretty much, I think, like our story is very similar, right? So when I had that tank, I first of all like didn't know much at all about aquatic plants, right? So and also aquascaping. So before the river, I actually scaped a 180 gallons, which I don't even know if I can call that scaping, but yeah, like I mean, I was intentionally trying to create, like a aquascape type of setup where like I knew I want to make it as natural as I can, right? So it's my like probably failed attempt at creating like a biotope-ish type of setup. But then yeah, like when I was doing the river, I had to learn about the plumbing, and then I had the grand ambition of like building this outdoor sump, like that incorporated a aquaponic system and everything, which turned out like it was a huge fail, like on the sump part. But then the tank was able to, just get away by having two FX6s for 450
Oh,
gallons, which is it's kind of it's kind of wild to think that just 202 FX6s would be sufficient to filter the entire 450 gallons. However, the plants really helped in terms of like acting as a filter and providing that water quality. So yeah, a lot of similarity right there, and even in the name.
yeah. Oh, that's actually the one I found you on. It was funny because when I first had a tank, it was just like most people. I got it handed to me, and it was and I had a turtle. And I put him in there with fish, and everything did go well for a while. And then I could
Mhm.
see him going after the fish, and I had to remove him. And then I'm like, what am I gonna
Sure.
do now? And I'm like looking as much as I can everywhere, and that's where my addiction probably started. And then I saw the river, and the river was the first one for me where I was like, I probably annoyed you all the time on there too, like asking you questions. But it was like a massive tank, and I was like, no, that's a dream tank. It's
Okay,
the
so
OG.
you started the hobby around, well, like 20, I don't know, like 16 or something, right?
Yeah, right around then.
Okay, cool, cool,
Yep.
cool. Then your progression is pretty okay. It's not like the fastest progression I've seen, but I mean, it's up there for sure.
Well, I feel like I don't want to talk bad about my wife, but she has hindered my progression. I've had to. I remember buying a 180 and we were in an apartment and it was ridiculous because it had no place it could go in our apartment. But I was like, it was so cheap. I was like, I have to have this, whatever. And she's
Sure.
like, no bigger than this. And then we got to the house. I'm like, hey, this is my wall. You can have the whole house. I want this wall for our tank.
Right.
And it was a year battle already just to get her to say yes. So it's been her stopping me, but now, especially now that she knows about you too, she's a little bit more supportive, especially when like now that she likes my tank and how it scaped and everything like that. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yours definitely turned out very great.
and I'm hoping she likes that when I can do like a paludarium style in the backyard. But I always go, I think I don't know if you're the same way. I think you are, but I don't need a lot of tanks, but when I do have a tank, I want it to be like I go a little overboard. Like I want it all. I want like massive. Like I want that to be massive outside. And it's like to somebody that isn't in the hobby, I think it's
Mhm.
like a little ridiculous. Like no one around me, any of our neighbors, they don't get it. So they come in, they're like, oh wow, like that's beautiful, but like, you know, I don't know,
Sure.
I couldn't do that, whatever. And so it's funny the outsider perspective, but for me, it's like that's all it's almost the only hobby that I have other than like working out or being out in nature. So
Right. And it's a good hobby to be in, especially for, all the wives out there that like, you rather your husband be, a fish keeper than having some other type of hobby like God forbid gambling or
yeah, or going out
like
golf,
stuff
like
like that.
even
Yeah.
golfing. She's always like, yeah, it's expensive. I was like, well, saltwater is probably more expensive. I try to lean on those things, but also like I was like, golf. The normal all of our
Mm-hmm.
friends golf. I was like, I don't really golf, and it's definitely a tough sport, but it's probably just as expensive. Or guys that like to work on cars, like she would
Yeah,
hate me to have a car in the
for
front
sure.
yard, and I'm working on it, and I'm not. Good thing I don't really. I like cars, but I don't know anything about them. So
Our hobby, like pretty much want make us want to stay home all the time, right?
yeah, that's
Which
true
is good,
too.
and spend time with the family.
The only downside is vacations. I need to get a camera because I'm over here like
Mm.
stressing that I don't ever have a really good backup person for vacations. But
Right. That's why I for me, whenever I build a setup that I know is pretty permanent, I always want to like try to automate it as much as I can. So for the
me
grotto,
too.
I mean, I unless the equipments fail or like there's a power outage or something, I probably don't have to like nobody has to take care of the tank for 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks, right? Like
Yeah.
this is without any care, right? Like you don't even have to feed the fish. I mean, like obviously I can set up like a auto feeder or whatever, right? So yeah, up to 2 weeks. The water change is still being done every day, right? And then the water quality is good and it's just really checking up on the system and that's about it. So for this one, for this paludarium behind me right here, I'm also gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna also automate it, right? Automate auto water change system, and then I'm actually gonna set up like a auto dosing, right, for the plants. So the automated water change system will tie in with two other tanks I'm gonna put here, so I don't have to, be hands on. I mean, like I remember when I had this conversation with George Farmer, and he was like, "Oh, I enjoyed water change, doing water change and everything." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure. You can for if you don't have to and
Certain
then you
tanks.
choose to, yes. Like I enjoy, pruning. I enjoy taking care of my tank when I am free, and then when I have time, and when like I don't have to, and then I want to, right? But then when you're just like you have more than one tank, and then you're already doing maintenance as a job, as a living, you're like maintaining everybody else's tank, and then you come home like you probably don't want to do any more of that, right? And then like
Well,
that's my
and
case.
I don't want to speak for all of Europe, but they typically don't have like as many monster tanks that I see. And so
Europe?
I usually, yeah, that I've seen like the creators themselves, at least they're
Oh, I see, I
some of the
see.
people I don't see as many. Like, there's like mixed fish tanks. Like he has some pretty massive tanks, but
Right.
like you look at like a George Farmer tank and they're like perfect and aquascape perfect, and but they're not massive, so a water change on that doesn't seem like as big of an ordeal, whereas like I annoy my family when I have to make one here.
Sure,
It's
sure,
I'm
sure.
switching out. I have like a almost 650 gallons of water, so I have to switch some out. I don't have to do it that often, but when I do it, it's not fun. It's not like on I have a 75 gallon that takes me 10 minutes, but I got to do a slow process on the. But that's why if I automate it, I think my wife is more willing for the backyard setup. If once I automate, they'll be happier. But that's what I mean is like he gets to go in there and prune out some beautiful plants and enjoy that process. But for me, it does, as I've gotten bigger with tanks, it feels a little bit like a chore. Like I enjoy feeding the fish, I enjoy adding plants, but water changes aren't as
It's
fun.
totally
But
a
I
chore.
also,
It's totally a chore. When you have to like especially with the discus tank, right? I mean, like with discus tank,
yeah,
if I hadn't automated, first of all, it's not gonna be good for the fish, right? Because when I automate it, like the water stays very stable. There's no spikes. There's no like drastic changes to the parameter. But then, yeah, when if I were to do manual water change on that discus tank, I'll have to do at least a weekly 50% water change, which is not fun.
yeah, and
Yeah,
that's I
it's
have
not
not
fun.
automated mine, and so I'm literally the mine is like in the center of my house. So I take a python to it, clip it on, and I'm sucking water out.
No,
And then
no,
I
just
am
no.
RO watering back in, but the RO takes so long. And then don't tell my wife, but one time the RO water return thing, the return, or sorry, the wastewater
Yeah.
flipped back into the window
Oh
and
no.
filled up the floor, but I didn't let her know. So like I'm like taking carpet, I'm lifting it up, I'm throwing baking
Yeah.
powder everywhere, whatever.
Oh no.
I'm drying towels, fanning it out overnight. Like I'm staying up late so she doesn't ever find out. But yeah, it is more of a chore, and I probably do too many water changes when I have not as many fish in a big tank. But I think I always got stuck in my head like when in doubt, change it out. So I see my
Sure.
fish acting a little bit weird. Before I even need to really I check I collect water for water parameters like
Yeah.
just in case, and I already start sucking water out. And at least do a 25% is what I always like. It's just like this OCD part of like fish keeping. Like I just
Right,
have this
sure.
weird. I never had any kind of issues like that, but as soon as I became a fish keeper, like I feel like it made me superstitious a little bit in
Yeah,
areas and the way I
for sure.
attack it.
I think if you don't want to automate your system, at the very least have like some type of drain valve built into your system. Like, I understand a lot of people have, just out of the box system where you don't want to deal with hard plumbing, just like PVC and all that. It's honestly, it's really easy. It's not even that hard, right? And then drilling, yeah, it's gonna be a little scary, especially if you have like a glass tank and whatnot. So like not many people want to even venture to do that, whatever. But then I mean, you just ask a professional, right? Like the fish store, some
Yeah.
of them will probably drill for you. And for me, like I just personally I hate seeing all these filtration gears and equipments in my tank, right? Like heater. Oh,
Yeah.
don't get me started on seeing a heater in the tank. It's just like I want my tank to be completely just like its own environment without the gears and all that. And then that actually really helped me out. That philosophy really helped me out in terms of providing the type of designs for my clients. So some clients, for example, like the higher end you go, the more customization they require or they want to have. So for example, like this current client, that I have right now, he's adamant about not seeing any type of filtration, equipment and like man-made stuff, right? In his tank, which I appreciate and I love so much. And he's like a dream client, and that's like, exactly my philosophy. Like it just came like very naturally to me. So I don't even have to really
You
struggle
sympathize with
to
it so much, yeah.
yeah, I don't have to struggle to kind of like try to figure it out. Okay, so like how am I gonna do that? But then it's already like that was the way I was gonna do it anyway.
Way
So
to do it, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, your tanks are amazing. I feel like that is like the dream job because you can essentially I think part of my favorite thing about the hobby, I used to think, my wife's like, you really like fish out of nowhere, and I was like, no, I
Mm.
do, but I like the environment. I like the creation part of it. And
Mhm.
even though I'm not like these amazing aquascapers or anything like that, I like being able to you feel like you're looking underwater at them and create their environment and see what they end up picking and choosing as their space. And I think a lot of that stuff is cool. And I say I don't know that I love and like the fish itself. I love the whole aspect of it. I think it also makes me feel like I can't, now that I have a kid too, I can't go to the river like whenever I want. I
Mm.
can't just go take a day trip out on the ocean all the time. And so that gives me a little bit of like my meditation back in the day. Like I
It
can
is
just
a
kind of go over
meditative
and do that
process.
thing.
It's a
It's like
complete
that reel that you
meditative
said about
process.
going out and going and just being able to relax. I hear one of your sounds is that you used was something like, they say going and sitting by water.
Oh yeah, yeah, like you
I
need
forgot
water,
what.
your brain needs water or something like that.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that
yeah.
for me. I definitely do. I feel like even that tunnel video I posted where I went down into a tunnel and came up. For
Yeah,
me, it was just like holding my breath sometimes just gives me. I think it's like a good release of stress. So like going in the
sure.
water and seeing all those things, and then also holding my breath kind of gives me like I don't know
It's
if it's like a
therapeutic.
it's like a workout almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good.
For I mean, like a lot of our modern day mental illness, obviously, I'm in no authority of diagnosing or like speak on it. But then, in my humble opinion, a lot of our modern day, especially city life, mental illness, stems from the separation from nature. If
Yeah.
people were to really go and have some solitude in nature and spend time in nature and really just observe and really have that immersive meditative experience every once in a while, like it charges you up. I mean, I don't think our listeners really necessarily would like. I think our listeners will already know that because they probably have the same type of love for
Yeah.
nature as
Definitely.
we do, so they already know the benefits. But yeah, like to me, I feel like yeah, it's just we are not meant to be caged in a city life like that. And then
A
yeah,
lot of, a
just
lot of cities haven't realized that. A lot of cities have added trees and gardens and places, and you realize a lot of people utilize that too.
yeah,
I in a lot of countries, at least a lot of the foreign countries I've gone to, people really utilize their parks, and it
sure.
does give them a break from the hustle and bustle. And I think the further away we go from nature, the more we realize we need it too.
Yeah, like one country that I love is Singapore. So my aunt lives there actually, and then Singapore has this policy that every building on the outside of the building and inside of the building needs to dedicate like a certain type of percentage of area to greenery. So like every
That's
building you
cool.
have to have, for example, like I don't know exactly, but like maybe like 10 to 15% of your building surface covered in green, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
that's a good policy. I
Yeah, yeah,
agree.
yeah. So we should do that too. I mean, like we're often behind on this type of things here in the States, but
I
I
swear.
think we really have
I
to.
think I think the US were amazing with a lot of stuff, but I really wish the US would adopt what we see doing well in other countries, and
Right.
at least try to adopt some of those things. Because places, when you travel, you start to realize, like, like, do I want to, like in Europe, do I want to pay every time I use the restroom? No, but I get why, because it's, like here you can just go in any place and use the restroom. So like, I'm not arguing there, but
Mm-hmm.
like nature and parks and some of those things, I'm like, yeah, like let's emulate,
Yeah. But I do love the I love our country for that though. Like the free parking and the free bathroom is just, yeah, like when I went to Europe it was not fun. Like I was like just like I miss home.
Well, walking around Paris, and this is not like like it's funny that I'm saying this on the podcast, but like walking around Paris, a couple times it's amazing, beautiful, everything, and every once in a while you get a whiff of like pee, and you'd realize that it's just like because somebody just didn't have money on them to
Oh, really?
to use
Oh,
the
wow.
restroom. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that I know for sure, but that's my experience. I've been there a couple of times, and you'd walk around some parts of the city. I mean, here you can walk around, parking lots, and sometimes people have peed in there too. So
Sure,
it's not
sure,
really a
sure.
thing. But if you don't, you find yourself in Europe running out of change and need to use the restroom, and you gotta go break change somewhere or ask somebody.
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah. That's the city life. Anyways, so I think we will conclude our first episode here. We really are looking forward to, inviting different guests onto our podcast and really, have like a deep dive into, what area of expertise they're specialized in. Like I mentioned, a couple of guests that I have in mind on the top of my head right now, like Luca. If you guys don't know, he is this 18-year-old or
Luke,
19-year-old kid.
Martin. Yeah, I'll look it up while you're talking. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he started doing wildlife photography and creating videos for Florida, especially ecosystem for the springs and like the reefs and all that. And he produced some amazing footage and was recently, I believe, was he covered in National
I
Geographic?
saw him in something.
I
I saw him
don't
in something.
remember,
Yeah, he
but
was
like
with
some
he
type
was
of
with them.
nature publication for sure. Right. And he was like I think he was in the news as well, right? But
Yeah,
his
you were right. I
content
was.
is just amazing. So like he's definitely a young person and very, interesting and very, very passionate young person that I want to bring onto the show. And Chris, look up this for those of you who don't know, he is a huge aquarist, and then he's also dubbed, the shrimp king, right? And then he breeds he's like the father of ornamental shrimps in not only Europe but around the world. And this guy is a literal rock star. He
Yeah, it was.
actually
He
go
sent
on
me.
tours, yeah, with his rock band, like all over the world. So he's literal rock star. He take all these amazing footage of different type of freshwater environments, whether it being in Europe, in Germany, or in America and South America. It's he's definitely a person that I want to bring on, and then I want to try to bring on Oliver Knott, because he is one of the aquascapers I personally really look up to. He's just an amazing person, but he's a little shy. I
Yeah,
think.
surprised you say it because you wouldn't get that from him, when you see
Oh,
him, because you see him all the
I don't
time.
mean shy in terms of like interacting with people, but just like in front of camera. I think he's not really open to that. So, maybe we'll try to get him on there. And then there's a whole bunch of different names and people that I want to get on the pockets. Oh, Ivan Makoji from Venezuela. So he's based in Venezuela and he does a lot of footage. He posts his footage of native habitat in the Amazons onto YouTube as well. So he is a huge name as well. Who else? There's a guy Wong. I forgot his first name. So his last name is Wong. Like he's in Indonesia and he is an expert on the sun bear, which is endemic only to Borneo, rainforest, and it's very endangered. It's like the smallest species of bears in the world, right? So he's
Oh,
like a
cool.
huge expert on it. And then he like how I got to know him is because he has a discus tank at home, and he's a discus keeper. To learn about his work in the Borneo rainforest, it's gonna be awesome. And then just to get a glimpse on his fish keeping side of things will be super interesting as well. So yeah, definitely stay tuned and subscribe, or what are some other ways, like follow, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Also,
just
and also just we're gonna evolve this. I think it's both of our first times on a podcast, but it's also my first time being in front of a camera. So I'm new to it. I'm actually normally a very outgoing person, but I'm trying to get used to you know kind of simplify my jokes on here and everything too, because I probably have some
no,
just funny humor.
you've been great. You
Uh,
you did great. And then I would hope to hear more of your humor in.
For sure. But that, yeah, I think, and the list that you already have sounds amazing of people to bring on just to hear some of their stories, because you see the content that they have, and we only know them through their content, but it'd be amazing to hear their stories. So
Yep, definitely. All right, great. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching or listen to our podcast, the Aqua Naturalist Podcast. And thank you for Casey co-hosting the first episode with me. And we will be back very soon. And then stay tuned. And thank you. See you next time. Thank you so much for listening. Before I introduce next episode's guest, I want to thank another friend of the show, Skylight Aquarium Lights. This is the light I've been using on all of my setups, including my clients. Their flagship model, Hyperspot, is the best light on the market. Not only it looks sexy, yeah, I just use sexy to describe an aquarium light, but its unique optical system produces beautiful shimmer effect, and the color spectrum is just incredible. The brand is from Poland and they are everywhere in Europe. However, they will soon be available in North America. So visit skylight.blue to find out more information. And for our next episode, we welcome our very first guest. And let me tell you, he is a rock star. No, really, he's literal rock star. In a rock band playing around the world and everything. Casey and I had the pleasure to sit down with the one and only Chris Lookup, aka the Shrimp King. We talk about his trips to all of the different aquatic habitats around the world, how he's crowned the royalty status for shrimps, and even his near-death experience in search for crayfish. All that will be in the next episode of the Aqua Naturalists Podcast. Till next time.